How did I Am One come to you and evolve?
Weird combination of personal. Okay, let's start really from the start, which is what everyone sort of tells you to always write what you know. Anytime you write something that feels like out of your depth, that you don't really have a good context for, that you will always struggle to find the heart of a story, or actually even just struggle to finish the story. You might have a really good idea, but unless you really know the history behind it or the reason for writing it, I think it'll genuinely always be a sort of, not a failure, but I don't think it'll ever really sing. So for I Am One, I mean, I've always had a very contentious and roller coaster relationship with my own father. And my father and my mother divorced when I was 2. My life has always been my mum on one side and my father on the other. And it's been a lovely childhood and brilliant upbringing. They've given me so much support. But with my father, there's always been a sort of sense of competitiveness and also a sense of him never really wanting me to get into acting. So him arriving to see plays, me at the Old Vic, me in HAMLET in Sheffield, me playing Romeo in York, I've always sought his approval, and I wanted him to say that he was proud of me. So that was a very specific thing. With my mum, she's always been very open and passionate about supporting me. My dad's always been supportive of me, but I think I've always searched for specific words from him. And so I Am One has been born from that desire from me to want to have a relationship with my father, and wanting my father to tell me those beautiful words, which is, I'm proud of you and I love you. He does, but it sort of stems from that. There's 2 things going on with I Am One as well. So the idea spawns from that, which is like, how can I, in my writing, convey that theme? How can I put the theme that I have a sort of an affinity with into a film, into a play, or into a screenplay? How can I then put it under a bracket that isn't a modern young boy like me seeking my father's approval? Like, how can I move it into a different generation so that it's not really a biographical story? And my stepfather, who brought me up on everything. Football team. I support Manchester United because he supports Manchester United. The clothes that I wear, the skinny jeans and the Converse and the leather jackets, and is from him. My personality, in some sort of way, my humor is from my dad, but my personality is from him. The likes and dislikes and the discipline and all that is from him. So he brought me up on Quadrophenia. He brought me up on The Who. He brought me up on 60s mod music. My stepfather counts himself as a punk. He loves the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and the Clash. But he's a lover of music. So yeah, so there's 2 things going on, which is this story about a boy wanting his father to tell him that he loves him. And then also how, if I could put the film in any sort of generation, I thought, well, I can put it in the mods time. I can put it in a time that I know really well, that I've studied a lot. I mean, hell, I've got a tattoo on my arm for my stepfather, for him, specifically for him. Wow. That I love him, you know, and it's the mod tattoo. So it's one, and people always ask me, you know, God, if you could live any time, any generation, I'm like, always, straight away, 60s, straight in. I want to be on a Vespa. And God, I even asked Scott Hancock in Big Finish. He said, in season 2, what would you like Dorian to do? I was like, put Dorian on a Vespa. Like, I asked for it. So it's something that really rings true to me. And I don't know why that is, because, you know, I think it's the look, it's the style. It's a sort of young, angry voice, all those young angry voices wanting to be heard and wanting to be recognized. So you've got that small angry rebellion going on, along with my own personal small angry rebellion of wanting my father to adore me and say that he's proud of me. It felt like the two worlds would exist brilliantly together. So it came from that in my head. I hadn't even written a word yet. It was from that in my head. I was like, right, that's A, that's B. I can put them together and create C. And I just wrote the title I Am One into my laptop and I started. So yeah, that was the spawn of the idea.
You've touched upon it. So who are Billy and Ron to you, and where are you looking to take their story?
Yeah, so, well, Billy is me, really. Billy is a young 20-something boy who over the course of 2 days, 2 days in the morning, grows up, becomes a man. And Ron is not necessarily my father, but fathers in general. And what's great about setting the story in 1964 is that there's an even bigger divide between generations. Less so now, but we always talk about, oh, I don't want to be like my father. I would never want to be like my dad, and there's that sense of that we always, as a different generation, look up to the generation before us and even the generation before them, and we notice the times have changed. What's great about setting it in 1964 with a father like Ron is that he went to war. He fought in the Second World War. When people came back of the Second World War, they were treated as heroes for a very short amount of time before they were ostracized and were struggling to find work. The 60s is rife for poverty and just trying to make ends meet. And then you've got this sort of bubbling revolution happening with the younger generation, about to go into, Beatles and The Who, and the swinging 60s are about a year away. So it's this sort of sense that the generational gap is even bigger than it is now. So Ron's ex-military, he's hard. He doesn't say very little. He's angry, not necessarily at Billy, but angry at the world. And in the film, it's about the two of them starting in very, very different places, and throughout the scenes, slowly but surely balancing each other out and meeting in the middle, and I guess discovering each other. I think the film's about them discovering each other. I mean, there's lots in it. There's toxic masculinity. There's the generational thing. There's culture. There's love, heart, family. But I think it's about a man and a father and son who don't understand each other, who never really have, getting to the point where they can. The film doesn't really wrap everything up in a bow. It leaves a lot to be desired. We leave the film on a moment where, oh, I think they're about to talk. And I think that's a lovely, for a short film, especially if it was a feature, you'd really mine that and you try and get into what that is and what that difficult conversation will be. But because it's a short film, you have the opportunity, because of the convention of it, to cut it short and leave them wanting more. And that's what I Am One does, hopefully. Will do, hopefully.
I'm sure it will. What immediate role does music play in the creative process? And do Billy and Ron have a song?
God, I sent you a couple, didn't I, back in the day? So I've in the script, while I was writing I Am One, I had the entire Quadrophenia album on loop in my headphones from start to finish, start to the end. There's about 22 tracks if you've got the deluxe edition, which I have of Quadrophenia, and it goes from the start to the finish and then loops back again. Every song really in Quadrophenia, bar maybe 2 or 3, are Billy's songs. I mean, there's a song called I'm one. You know, so that really rings true. And there's also, I'm just gonna, do you mind if I just try and find what the name of the song for what I think for Ron is? Quadrophenia, 2 seconds. It's great content for you. There's a song called, so basically on the Quadrophenia album, there's a song called I'm One, which I think is a very, very, very Billy song, as well as The Real Me. There's actually a line in I Am One, which I've directly pinched from that song, is "Can you see the real me?" which is one of Billy's lines, which is such a brilliant line. Can you see the real me? God, I wouldn't have the balls to ask that of my father. You know, and there's a boy in the 60s asking a man that he's terrified of, can you see the real me? I think it's quite ballsy. And then there's a song called The Dirty Jobs, which is in Quadrophenia, which is basically from the perspective of parents at that time. I slave away, I work my ass off for you. You don't respect us. And there's there's The Dirty Jobs, which is a very Ron song. There's loads of different examples in the song about I work as a farmer, I work in the butcher shop, and aren't we all the same? Are we all just striving for a salary? You know, that's basically it. The dirty jobs that we've come back from. So for me, those two songs are Billy. Well, there's a lot for Billy, but for Ron. But there's also a different thing going on as well in terms of music. Music is so important to me, and I've only really just discovered this. I've sort of known that I pinch, that I steal, that I borrow from things that I hear and think, God, that would be a great opening to a film. But having Chris Hyson as my sort of music collaborator on the last two films, on Lola and on Here We Are, I started listening to a lot of Zoe Keating, which is an amazing, extraordinary solo violinist. Great songs. And there's a couple of songs called The Path and The War. And they're just so emotional and impactful and guttural. It kind of feels like you're in something when you're listening to them. So alongside having Quadrophenia as an album while I was writing, I always knew that I never really wanted to use any of the Who music or any sort of 60s music in the film, and actually try and get some sort of similar sort of violin and sort of soundtracky stuff. So I've been listening to a lot of different things, and it all subconsciously or consciously adds to the writing and the development of the film.